Welcome to Tabletop Aesthetics. Today's aesthetic is MTG CEDH. Today's game is a third round from the Chaos 4 CEDH tournament I played in. I'm playing my Adeline Resplendent Beatdown list, a win-conless stacks deck. We have Fervent Alchemist on Gale, Waterdeep Prodigy, and his background Scion of Halistar. Next is Dai Yum on Tymna the Weaver and Malcolm, Keen Knight Navigator. Finally, we have the Squee on Esika, God of the Tree. With that, let's start the game. I go first and draw for turn. I play Sadstone Caverns, cast Jewel Lotus, then crack Gale to add triple white to cast Adeline. Next, I cast Chrome Mox, imprinting Path to Exile. Finally, I finish with Elseed of Life's Bounty. I end the turn. Fervent takes his turn, draws and plays an island. He casts Gale, follows that up with a mana crypt. He taps his island and crypt to cast Gale, and then finishes by cracking Gale to cast Scion of Halistar. Dai draws for turn, plays a Flooded Strand and cracks it right away, taking one and searching for Underground Sea. Casts Mana Crypt and then Malcolm, Keen Knight Navigator. He then casts Lotus Petal, cracks it and finishes with Grafdigger's Cage. Squee takes his turn, draws for turn, plays Bayou and casts a Birds of Paradise. He passes. I untap, draw and play a Snow-Covered Plains. I go straight to combat and attack Squee with Alseid and Fervent with Adeline. Adeline triggers, creating a 1/1 white human creature token tapped and attacking each opponent. Fervent takes 5 commander damage and blocks a token. Squee takes 2 and Dai blocks a token. I then end the turn. Fervent untaps, wins his crypt trigger and draws, triggering Sion's ability on Gale. He looks at the top 2 cards, putting Calling the Weak into the grave and the other on top, drawing a card. On his main phase, he plays Prismatic Vista. He cracks Vista. I hold priority and cast Archivist of Ogma. Vista resolves, searches for a snow-covered swamp, Archivist triggers, and I draw a card and gain a life. Fervent passes. Dai untaps, wins his crypt trigger and draws for turn. He plays Sea of Clouds. Taps crypt to cast Fellwash Stone. He follows that up with Tymna. He moves to combat and attacks me with Malcolm. I cannot block and Malcolm deals 2. Malcolm triggers and Dai creates a treasure token. He moves to second main phase and Tymna triggers, losing 1 and drawing a card. He ends the turn. Squee untaps, draws and plays a Forbidden Orchard. He then casts Esika, God of the Tree, and gives Fervent a 1/1 colorless spirit token from Orchard. He passes after that. I take my turn, untap, draw, and go to combat. I attack Dai with Adeline and Archivist. Adeline triggers. Fervent blocks a token with Gale, Squee blocks a token, and Dai blocks a token with Tymna, gaining 2 and taking 9 from Archivist and Adeline. I go to second main phase and play Cavern of Souls, naming Human. I move to end step and Fervent holds priority and casts Mystical Tutor. It resolves and searches for Toxic Deluge, putting it on top. Ogma triggers and I draw and gain a life. Fervent takes his turn, untaps and wins his crypt trigger. He then draws and Gale triggers. He puts Snapcaster into the grave and leaves Deluge on top and draws it. He takes no actions and passes. Dai untaps, wins his trigger and draws for turn. He moves to combat and attacks me with Malcolm. I take 2 and Malcolm triggers, creating a treasure token. He moves to second main and Tymna triggers, losing 1 and drawing a card. He casts a Ristic Study and it resolves. He ends the turn. Squee untaps, draws and plays a Tropical Island. He then casts Relic of Legends and gives Dai a 1/1 Spirit from Orchard. He passes after that. I untap, draw, and go to combat. I attack Fervent with Adeline, a token, and Archivist. Adeline triggers. Fervent blocks Adeline with a Spirit, a token with Gale, and takes 3. Squee blocks a token, and Dai blocks a token with Tymna, gaining 2. I go to second main and play a Plains and finish my turn with a Weathered Runestone, paying for the Ristic. Fervent holds priority at the end step and casts Chain of Vapor, targeting Ristic Study, paying for Ristic. Dai responds and casts Brainstorm. He draws 3 and puts 2 back. Chain resolves and Dai doesn't continue the chain. Fervent then goes to his turn. Untapping, wins crypt trigger and draws, triggering Gale. Looks at the top 2, puts Arcane Signet into the grave and draws the other. He then plays Command Tower, casts an LED and passes the turn. Dai takes his turn, untaps, loses his crypt trigger taking 3 and draws for turn. He plays Ancient Tomb for turn and recasts Ristic Study. He moves to combat and attacks me with Malcolm for 2. Malcolm triggers and he creates a treasure. Goes to second main and Tymna triggers, losing 1 and drawing a card. He ends a turn. Squee untaps, draws and plays a forest. He casts Elish Norn, the Grand Settlebite. Ristic triggers and he can't pay. Dai draws. I hold priority and sack Alseid to give Adeline Pro Blue. Elish Norn resolves, taking me out of the game. I untap, draw, play a Plains and go to the end step. Fervent holds priority and casts Ad Nauseam. Ristic triggers and he doesn't pay. Dai draws and holds priority, casting Swan Song, countering Ad Nauseam. Fervent creates a 2/2 bird, which instantly goes to the grave due to Elish Norn. Fervent goes to his turn, untaps, draws, triggering Gale, putting a Dakmor Salvage into the grave and drawing the other. He takes no other actions and passes. Die untaps, uses his crypt trigger, draws return, and plays a Bloodstained Mire, cracking it right away, searching for a scrubland. Die then casts Peer into the Abyss, taking 2 from Ancient Tomb. Peer resolves, and Die draws 39 cards and goes down to 11 life. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding Gemstone Caverns. He casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black mana. He casts Talisman of Dominance. He casts Dramatic Reversal. He casts Ranger Captain of Eos. It enters, triggers, and he doesn't search. He cracks Captain, silencing the table. He casts Demonic Tutor, searching for a card into his hand. He casts Thassa's Oracle. It enters and triggers. Holds priority and casts Demonic Consultation and names Wingcrafter. He exiles his library, Thassa resolves, and Die wins the game. Even though I lost this game, it was much better than going to another draw due to the short time limit. Though it might have been better to mulligan down for stacks pieces since I was up against 3 blue players, I was banking on Adeline's turn 1 aggressiveness, Alseid for protection, and the Archivist of Ogma to refuel my hand, which it did, and draw some stacks pieces, which it didn't. Myself and the table were quite puzzled with Fervent not casting Deluge, as it would have turned off Dice Engines and reset my board. I also tried attacking him more to bait it out to get him to cast it and turn off Dice Engines, but he didn't budge. Squeeze Elesh Norn Plague was out of nowhere. I'm not familiar with Esika, so I don't know if Elesh Norn is a common card ran in the list, but it was devastating, and it took me out of the game completely, which I thought was a weird play. Sure, it turns off Dice Engines, but it takes me out of the game entirely to apply any pressure, especially to the 2 Thoracle Adnos decks. And from Squeeze board state, it didn't look like he would be in a position to 1v2 Fervent and Die. But then again, I don't know what's in his hand. Die played it slow and steady, as I was the only one applying any kind of pressure. He got free cards and mana and took home a free game. Overall, it was a great game that taught me to definitely mulligan for stacks pieces or better interaction, as a turn 1 Adeline just isn't aggressive enough. That's it for my Chaos 4 games. There was a 4th round, but I lost power in the middle of the game and it corrupted my recording of it, so unfortunately the footage is lost. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when I upload my next video, and I'll see you all next time.